I just finished Darling in the Franxx, and this was like the lead up anime of the spring, I think, going into summer. Um, this is the new one that I think everyone was looking forward to because so many people, like, you look at like characters that people gravitate towards too. Uh, Zero Two was the the waifu of the season, I guess. Um, so many women I know are cosplaying her right now at Anime Central or Anime Expo, I should say, and uh, I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a lot of them at New York Comic Con later this year. And I don't know. It was. Let me start off by saying this was a good series. I'm not going to say perfect because I feel like they wanted a second season, and I'm gonna go right out and say that the first half of the show was better than the second half of the show. Just outright better. Like it was like a slow drip of world building. It was good action. It was great animation, and it just died off towards the end. I mean, once you got up to episode 19, like it hit a. It was 18 or 19. I forget what one it was, but it was when like that. It just took a nosedive in terms of how bad it was because like that slow building that they gave you was just completely like rushed into an explosion of just anime cliches and. When the series got to the halfway point, I want to say it was around there that it reached its peak. That was like the climax of everything going on and all that, and it was just like things had a natural way of going about them. And when it got to the first few episodes into the second half, like it just took a change. And this is spoilers, by the way, so when you see the group has like fully accepted Zero Two and they're all getting along and they're not playing defense against the two of them hooking up ever again, and then you see Hero start growing horns, it's a it's nice, but it's not ideal. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the quality of the storytelling took a hit in the second half, which I don't know. I don't know what happens in between things that are behind closed doors. I mean, maybe we were just assuming that things were better than they actually were with the first half, just because we didn't know what they were building towards. They were just looking around, they were exploring, and I feel like if they had like sprinkled in some of the stuff from like episodes 19 and 20 early on, because during the first half you got a real sense that the people in charge of the humans, like who they call Papa, was just a dick. Like you could tell. It's like, oh, like the fact that they were covering their faces is like, who are the good anime characters that aren't villains that go out of their way to like look non-human? And like there were certain things that just like the first half of the show, the whole thing could be a metaphor for like emerging sexuality among adolescents. I mean, that like the pistol stamen relationship that they were pushing, like that's like flower sex basically, flower sexuality. So like it was like and plus then you had like the mechas where the guys are riding the women. It's like it's clear like they have this in mind, and that was interesting. That was different. That was new, and I feel like the second half gave us a lot of not new stuff. It was like, grow up, forge your own path. It was like anime cliches. I mean, I'm not saying it was bad overall, but the second half was not as good as the first half. It's just like find me someone that likes the second half better, and I'll show you someone that's got something wrong with them. So I just finished watching episode 24, and I didn't do like a binge watch of everything, so, but my rule for having a great weekend is being able to take as long as possible to describe it in my own words on Monday. So when I sit down to think about everything that happened, the first half was a lot of good stuff, but the second half was, it's like, oh, we're gonna figure out how to play house, and then we're gonna all like hook up, and then we're gonna have the rebirth of humanity, and it wasn't all that interesting. And I don't know what they were trying to do, or if someone like in the middle of things decided, no, we're not gonna do this anymore. But the last episode, I'll say this, it ends on a satisfactory note, but not really. Like, I wanted, like, this is me personally, like, I wanted something more than the two main characters die and get reincarnated, which, anime cliche. I mean, I have no idea what the hell is going on over there. So, it's a lovely day in New Jersey. It's nice and sunny out, nice and cool out for a summer day. But the last few episodes are not great. And, like, it really put a hamper on my enjoyment of the show. And the action got generic. I mean, I feel like they had like a budget run out or something towards the end. It's like, oh, we're not getting a second season, so we're definitely gonna just like throw it in there and build it up. And I feel like there were certain character things that got shuffled off really quickly. Like the one character, I want to say Ikuno. I'm not sure. She was like the really smart one of the group, and she was sort of, I don't know. They kind of didn't get into it because like when she wanted to be partnered up with another female, you kind of got the sense that maybe she wasn't like, let's say, heteronormative for the group. It's kind of implied, but you just see her. She's the oldest, and she's the one that's probably most likely gonna die. And then you had Naomi from the beginning, who it was a small plot thread, but it was just a curiosity, and because I feel like they could have explored a lot more things that they were going for, but then they were like, well, we gotta play it safe now, so see ya. Because Kuno was someone that was interesting, but it was... I don't even know how to describe it. It was just not that... If she was gonna be if they were gonna tackle certain things, I think they could have done more with the Nines, for example, because they don't do anything with them. They just establish early on that the Nines are this group of pilots that are absolutely loyal to Papa, and then when Papa ends up becoming Virum, which they don't even end, by the way, which, what the hell was the point? I mean, they took Virum, and, all that's left is the two guys, or the two faces of Virum, and you don't know what, it was just a cliche of, well, we don't know what the hell we're doing, so we're just gonna show them exploding, and then it's we're gonna have, this, nice little monologue about And Virum in this thing is kind of like to me, a metaphor for living death. It's like Zero Two and Hero are these two they're these like one-winged birds that decide to fly together. Meanwhile, Virum is like the counterpoint to that, which is like there are two things that are merged together that'll just thing everything. And to me, that's death. That's like everything becomes one. You would rather have your pain and sorrow and struggles. And I've seen enough anime that have done something similar that I'm like, God damn it, this was good early on. What the hell happened? So, and I don't, like I said, I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I don't know what was the stuff that was even worth checking out. So, and in the ending, I want to say it's like hundreds of years later, because like a tree, because they use a tree and a city being developed, and like something like that, it can happen in a span of a few years, but I don't think so. Nah, a tree doesn't grow that quickly to be like that over a span of a few years. So this is like generations later, and so it's a like a pleasant note that it ends on, but it's not. And it's like ultimately comes back to it, but it's a reincarnation and not so much a the two of them come back in time. So I would have to say overall it's worth watching, but the show itself will leave you wanting more. So ultimately the show is a disappointment. So it's and there was a criticism early on saying that this was like a nod or a tribute to Neon Genesis Evangelion, and if that's the case, this thing fell way short of that. I mean, Ava, like, what is it, 20 years now? 30 years later, almost, is still better than stuff that came out that's coming out now, like just on a intelligence scale. And we assign a lot of intelligence to that, but the literary criticism that Ava inspired consistently and still does is still gonna be like this one. Like the first half, you can actually have some intelligent conversation about saying what this means, what that means, or what can be extrapolated from that. But then I have Roland Barthes in the back of my head, so it's like, you'll never know. And he would say it with a French accent, I think, but I'm not going to torture you guys with a French accent. So, okay, so Darling in the Franxx. Would I watch it again? No. Would I recommend other people? Yes. Was it ideal? No. Who was my favorite character? I mean, Hero wasn't really a great main character. He wasn't. I mean, like, he was just like, he was going to end up with 0-2, so he ended up with 0-2. Like, despite what everyone told him, despite what everything happened, and like early on, he was showing like a spark of like why you should watch him, but in the second half, it just became so I will follow you anywhere, without question, and we're gonna keep going, and all that bullshit, and even like there's only a handful of like really interesting supporting characters. Like the best girl, so to speak, is I want to say Ichigo, who is the blue-haired chick, and like her stuff, like all that kid stuff, where it's like adolescent like sexuality, relationships forming. That was interesting. That was interesting. And they, like, just set it in stone, put it on pause, and coasted for the second half of the show. They didn't really explore that much else. They didn't, like, Nana and Hachi, I think, was, like, 7 and 8. Those, like, they're, like, when they became, like, immortal adults, they became interesting. Because Nana had, I guess their definition of puberty was, like, emotions coming out, and for stamens and pistils. And Hachi became very, like, he became conditioned to be set in his ways for very logical. And, like, they were interesting, but they didn't have that much screen time to be interesting. Then you had Dr. Franxx, who was like, okay, this guy might be a little bit interesting. Then second half comes episodes 17, 18, 19, all them. That happens, and he's like, he's not interesting at all. He's just generic bad guy villain scientist. So, but still, I recommend this series. Like, watch the first half at least, just because it's interesting. And then you have, like, the first human baby being born in 100 years. Like, that one was kind of interesting, but they... Like, that... they didn't do much with it. They had stuff to work with, they didn't do much with it. So, alright, that was Darling in the Franxx. Again, I would recommend it. I wouldn't watch it again. The character designs are great. While they're there, that's right. I mean, the whole second half, like, the amount of mecha action, like, I think that's where I think the budget ran out, because, like, they focused more on like the characters coasting and all that stuff, and like but it wasn't like, it was like, all right, like, we had our 12 episodes of like character interactions with mechas and all that stuff. Then it became, it's like, all right, let's just hit all the cliches and plot points and just coast. And then, like, midway, 3/4 of the way through of the second season, we're gonna, or the second part, I should say, second half, we're just gonna, like, info dump and, like, set up everything, and we're gonna have, like, generic action, like, with, like, that looks like, kind of like that firework thing. Like, instead of, it's not even fight scenes anymore, it's just, like, cliche spectacle. So, I hope this helped everybody, so, peace.